On my 18th birthday, I thought I was finally going to have one day that belonged to me. The decorations were up, the cupcakes were ready, and my friends were supposed to arrive any minute. My name is Peyton. I had spent the entire week telling myself that turning 18 would feel like the beginning of my real adult life. I imagined a small but meaningful celebration in our backyard, handmade crafts on the table, string lights glowing overhead, and my friends finally filling a space that felt like mine. Instead, I stood in our kitchen, holding a tray of frosted cupcakes, while my mum stared at her phone, sending apology texts to my guests. It had started that morning when my brother stormed into the house, slamming the front door so hard the picture frames rattled. He had been planning a big delivery run for our family craft store in Birmingham, Alabama, a huge custom order he had bragged about for weeks. But the order collapsed, the shop truck broke down, and he came home furious. He didn't ask how my party plans were going. He didn't even glance at the decorations. He just looked toward the backyard and said, "If I can't have fun, then neither can she." The moment those words left his mouth, my mum went quiet. By the time I realized what was happening, she had already messaged everyone saying I was sick with a fever, and the party was cancelled. No one asked me. No one warned me. It was simply decided. Hours later, the backyard stayed decorated, the cupcakes untouched on the counter, and my phone stayed painfully silent. I stood there, holding the tray, feeling everything I had planned collapse right in front of me. What they didn't realize was that night would not just ruin my birthday. It would be the night they lost me for good. A few hours later, when everyone finally gathered around the kitchen table, the air felt so thick I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Mum stood with her arms crossed. Dad leaned against the counter trying to look calm, and Dylan sat there, still sulking like the whole world owed him an apology. Mum spoke first, her voice sounding like she was reading from a script. Dylan had a really terrible day. The biggest order of the month got cancelled. The truck broke down on the highway and the tow cost a fortune. He works full-time at the store dealing with customers and bills every single day. We have to support him right now. Dad just nodded along. I looked straight at Mum. "So you cancelled my 18th birthday without even asking me? Because he lost one order." Dylan snorted from his chair. "Oh my God, Peyton. Are you seriously making this about you right now? I lost a whole week of work, the pressure is killing me, and you're complaining about some handmade decorations. How selfish does that sound?" I turned to Dad. "What do you think?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I just want everyone calm. A loud party would have made things worse. We can do it another time." I laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. I'm not in a good place either. "Does that matter at all?" Dylan cut in immediately. "You're always fine. You're tough. I'm the one carrying the real pressure, managing the shop, handling big orders, worrying about rent. I deserve a break more than you deserve a party." That line hit me again. Mum's voice sharpened. "Dylan is more sensitive. He feels things deeper. You've always been stronger and more independent, Peyton. We don't have to worry about you the same way." It sounded like a compliment. It wasn't. I pressed harder. "And lying to everyone that I'm sick, that's your idea of caring too." Mum shot back. "I didn't want anyone bothering you or Dylan. That was an adult decision. You don't see the big picture." Our voices rose until Mum was yelling for us to stop, and Dad was muttering enough without actually stopping anything. Then right in the middle of the noise, the doorbell rang. No one moved. It rang again. Finally, Dad went to answer it. I heard his surprised voice. "Nancy, what are you doing here?" I stepped into the hallway and saw Aunt Nancy standing at the door with a suitcase beside her. She could see everything. The backyard still decorated, the untouched cupcakes, my flushed face. Dylan slumped at the table like a storm cloud. Mum appeared beside Dad, forcing a bright fake smile. "Nancy, we didn't know you were coming." Aunt Nancy raised an eyebrow. "I texted you yesterday and again this morning." No reply, so I figured I'd surprise my niece for her 18th birthday. She looked straight at me. "Happy birthday, Peyton." Mum jumped in fast. "She's sick, fever. We had to cancel." Aunt Nancy's eyes moved slowly over my jeans and t-shirt. No tissues, no medicine, no blanket. Sick. Right. Dad rushed in with nervous excuses about stress, the ruined order, everyone being on edge. Aunt Nancy held up her hand. "I didn't ask you." Then she turned to me. "Peyton, what actually happened? No one in my house had ever asked me that directly." So I told her everything the party cancelled without my consent. The lie about me being sick, Dylan's words, and every single time before that when his plans came first and mine were pushed aside. When I finished, the kitchen went silent. Mum immediately jumped in. "She's exaggerating. Dylan's had a hard time. He works full time. We're just trying to support him. Peyton has always been independent." From the table, Dylan scoffed. "Are we really doing this in front of Aunt Nancy over a cancelled party?" Aunt Nancy looked straight at my parents. "Support him emotionally. Interesting." Then she dropped the sentence that changed everything. "For the past 2 years, I've been wiring you money every month to keep the craft store alive. Rent, supplies, emergencies, even extra this month because you said you wanted to do something special for Peyton's birthday. And this is what I walk into." I stared at her. "You've been paying for the store 2 years," Aunt Nancy said, her voice softening when she looked at me. "When the pandemic almost wiped you out, Linda called me crying. I believed she was trying to hold the family together. I did not agree to bankroll a family where one child's meltdown matters more than the other child's milestone." Mum stiffened. "You don't understand how sensitive Dylan is," Aunt Nancy fired back. "Being sensitive doesn't give him the right to erase his sister's birthday." Mum grabbed Aunt Nancy's arm in panic. "You can't just do that. We have bills, the lease, employees. Aunt Nancy pulled free. I'm not walking away from the kids. I'm walking away from being your financial safety net." Then she turned to me again. "Peyton, I can't undo what they did tonight, but I can give you a way out. If you want, you can come live with me in Spokane. I have a spare room. You can finish school there. We'll look at college and part-time work. You deserve a home where your birthday doesn't get cancelled because your brother had a bad week." Behind her, my parents started talking over each other. Mum accused her of trying to steal me. Dad begged everyone to calm down. Dylan muttered about betrayal, but their voices started fading. For the first time in my life, a door had opened that they didn't control. I didn't ask for time to think. I knew if I waited, I would start shrinking the whole thing down until it sounded like a small misunderstanding. So when Aunt Nancy said I deserved better, the answer came out before I could doubt it. "Okay," I said, "I want to go." Mum's face twisted. "You are not going anywhere. You're emotional. We'll throw you a party next weekend. We'll make it up to you. You are not tearing this family apart over one bad decision." Dad raised his hands. "Let's just calm down. Nobody moves states over an argument." Aunt Nancy didn't budge. "She's 18. She gets to choose. She told me to pack what mattered." Upstairs, my room felt smaller than ever. The outfit I had planned to wear was still laid out on the bed. I packed jeans, hoodies, notebooks, my camera, a few books. Every item felt like a small claim over my own life. When I came downstairs with my bags, Mum's eyes were wet, but I couldn't tell whether she was crying for me or for the money that had just disappeared. "If you walk out that door with her, don't expect us to be waiting when you decide to come back." A few months earlier, that would have destroyed me. Now it only sounded like another rule I no longer planned to obey. "Okay, then don't expect me to keep pretending this is normal." Dad didn't hug me. Dylan stared at his phone and muttered, "Unbelievable." Aunt Nancy placed a gentle hand against my back and guided me outside. The door closing behind us felt like a line being drawn. 2 weeks after I arrived in Spokane, life started shifting from survival to possibility. Aunt Nancy helped me research community college scholarships and jobs that had nothing to do with the craft store. Whenever I said, I'm probably not good enough, she would ask. Who told you that? You or them? I got a part-time job at an independent bookstore downtown. That's where I met Jordan. He came in looking for a graphic design book and stayed to talk. Being around him felt easy in a way family never had. He listened without trying to correct my feelings or minimize my past. But my phone didn't stay quiet. At first, Mum's messages sounded apologetic on the surface, but they always circled back to how hard things were at the store now that the money had stopped. Dad sent shorter texts. Hope you're settling in. We miss you. Neither of them ever truly admitted the lie. Eventually, the tone changed. Mum started hinting that if I just talked to Aunt Nancy and smoothed things over, maybe the help would start again. That's when it hit me. They didn't miss me. They missed what I could do for them. One night, after another message about bills and Dylan's stress, I set my phone down and said out loud, "They don't want me back. They want me useful again." Aunt Nancy didn't deny it. That realization pushed me to do something I never thought I would. I texted my parents, "If you really want me to even consider coming back, then Dylan needs to move out. He's 22. He can live on his own. I will only think about coming home if he leaves." The answer came first, through silence, then through Dylan himself. One grey afternoon 3 months later, when Jordan and I walked out of the library, I saw Dylan leaning against his old truck across the street. He crossed toward me, ignoring the traffic, and stopped a few feet away. "We need to talk," he said. "Alone." He told me Mom had given him my address and schedule. They're worried. They said you're hiding out here. I stayed where I was. If you have something to say it here. He glanced at Jordan dismissively, then focused on me. "They told me about your ultimatum. Do you have any idea how insane that is? You're trying to blow up the family because you didn't get a birthday party." Hearing him reduce my entire childhood to one ruined party turned something in me cold. I gave them one chance to put me first. Just once. "So what did they decide?" His jaw tightened. "They decided not to throw their son out on the street. They picked their peace." Then he stepped closer, blocked my path, grabbed my sleeve, and tried to pull me toward the truck. "You're coming with me. Call Mom and Dad, tell Aunt Nancy you overreacted and end this." I yanked back. "Let go." Before he could pull harder, Jordan stepped in calmly, removed Dylan's hand from my sleeve and said, "She said, let go. Touch her again and I'm calling the police." Dylan stared in disbelief, then turned his anger back on me. "You're really going to call the cops on your own brother, Aunt Nancy, and this guy have completely messed with your head." Jordan didn't move. "This is her. You just don't like that she finally has backup." I looked Dylan straight in the eye. "You crossed the line. You don't get to put your hands on me anymore." He kept ranting about how I was hurting everyone, how Mom was devastated, how the store was barely surviving. I didn't believe him anymore. I didn't break anything I said. "I just stopped covering the cracks for you. Don't come to my job. Don't follow me. If you touch me again, I will call the police." I walked away. 2 days later, Mom's final message arrived. It started with the usual accusations, then went straight to the point. They had discussed my ultimatum, and they were not asking Dylan to leave. He was their son. He was struggling. They said I only wanted to come back on my own terms, that I had turned Aunt Nancy against them, and because of me they were now borrowing money from friends just to keep the store alive. Then came the line I will never forget. "If you insist on acting like this, we will have no choice but to focus on the child who still cares about this family." There it was. Not implied, just written plainly. "We choose him." I stared at the message for a long time, waiting for the usual guilt to hit. It never did. Instead, I felt something quieter and steadier. Relief. I typed back 3 words. "Thank you. Goodbye." Then I blocked Mom. I blocked Dad. I blocked Dylan. I blocked the family group chat. Every number connected to that house. For the first time in my life, the silence that followed didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. Aunt Nancy saw me sitting there, staring at the empty screen. She didn't ask much, just put a hand on my shoulder and said, "You did the right thing." In the weeks that followed, I focused on the present. The bookstore job felt solid. Jordan and I spent more time together, walks in the park, movies at the little theatre. Normal things I had never had before. I received my acceptance letter from the local community college with a small scholarship. Everything slowly started falling into place. 1 year later, on my 19th birthday, Aunt Nancy and a few friends from the bookstore surprised me with slightly crooked decorations and lopsided homemade cupcakes. It was small, simple, and completely mine. No lies, no cancellations, no one storming in with a bad mood that outranked my joy. When it came time to blow out the candles, I realized something that hit harder than I expected. I was no longer bracing for anyone to ruin it. Through relatives, I heard what happened back in Birmingham. The craft store was no longer theirs. The sign had changed. A notice in the window read, "Under new management." The comments online filled in the rest. The business had struggled for months. Staff were let go. The atmosphere had turned tense. Without Aunt Nancy's money and with no one left to hold it together, the store that had justified Dylan's importance was sold at auction. Mum and Dad had to file personal bankruptcy downsize to a much smaller house and borrow from everyone they knew while pretending the sale was strategic. Dylan lost his job at the store, bounced to a small repair shop, fought with the manager, showed up late and lost that one too. The person who once declared he mattered most now worked warehouse minimum wage shifts and shared a cramped apartment with 3 strangers. I would love to say I felt nothing. That would be a lie. Part of me felt grim satisfaction watching consequences arrive without me lifting a finger. Another part felt tired sadness for what he could have been if our parents hadn't raised him to believe the world revolved around him. But my life was no longer built around his choices. Sometimes I still think back to that night in the kitchen and wonder what would have happened if my parents had chosen differently. If they had told Dylan, "The order falling through is unfortunate, but tonight is your sister's birthday." If they had apologized honestly, if they had listened before defending themselves, would I have stayed? Maybe. But that is not what happened. What happened is this: they showed me over and over that my pain was optional, while Dylan's comfort was non-negotiable. And once I finally believed them, I left. That was the real turning point. Not because walking away made me cruel, but because staying would have meant agreeing that I deserved less. I know now that love that only exists when you stay quiet is not really love. A family that only functions when one person absorbs all the hurt is not healthy. And when parents call one child sensitive and the other strong, what they often mean is this one child will be protected and the other will be expected to survive anything. For years I thought choosing myself made me selfish. Now I know better. I didn't break that family. I just stopped hiding the fractures they built into it.